Hi and welcome. This video provides an introductory overview of implementing transition discoveries. Transition discoveries is a systems level approach to empowering youth, families, and stakeholders to improve transition practices and programs in their community. Systems are defined as the networks of knowledge, support, and influence between youth, families, schools, agencies, and community partners that together impact positive post school outcomes. The Transition Discovery's implementation process focuses on the completion of four main stages. Each stage has a corresponding coaching and progress monitoring requirement where LEA teams work alongside both the training and consultation services of Patent and the Transition Discoveries Initiative team. Each of the four stages of the implementation process is comprised of several substeps. The substeps represent an iterative process, meaning that each step must be completed and applied to the next step in order to move forward to the next stage of implementation. All stages of the implementation process are led by an LEA's Transition Discoveries Implementation Team, which is comprised of 2 to 3 LEA staff. This team must be created before implementation begins. In addition, before implementation, the LEA implementation team must complete an online course that teaches them each step of the implementation process and how to use the proprietary Transition Discoveries data collection, action planning, and progress monitoring tools associated with each stage of the implementation process. This training occurs asynchronously via the Schoology online learning platform, meaning that each LEA staff member on the implementation team will log into the course and complete the course, which guides them through how to use all of the tools within the implementation process. The course is organized into four parts, each representing a stage of the implementation process. Each part of the course contains a video that is designed to be interactive, meaning that the staff will watch but will also complete activities together with the instructor from the TD initiative team. These activities mostly take place within a single activity sheet, but are also completed through additional deliverables completed with guidance provided within the Schoology course. These products of learning are uploaded by each LEA implementation team member into the Schoology course as proof of completion of the required pre-implementation training. After the initial training is completed, the implementation process begins with the use of the Transition Discovery Survey to gather data from youth, families, and stakeholders about effective transition practices, programs, and services, as well as those that represent priority areas for innovation and improvement. Before the survey is administered, the LEA will work to identify youth, families, and stakeholders who together provide a representative sample of the diversity of individuals in their community. The LEA team will use a systematic approach coupled with evidence based practices for youth and family engagement in order to identify this representative sample to complete the survey. Stage 2 involves identifying priority areas from the results of this data collection process. A detailed report is provided to each LEA that explains results for how often and how effective transition practices, programs, and services are according to the definitions of effective practices across the 9 indicators of the Transition Discovery's Quality Indicator Framework. Teams utilize a data review tool to support this process, which results in the identification of priorities for action planning. All computation and organization of the data is completed for teams by the Transition Discoveries Initiative, and as a result, the emphasis of Stage 2 is for teams to engage in data driven decision making rather than data analysis. Stage 3 focuses on recruiting a group of youth, families, and stakeholders who are interested in joining a transition change agent team. This team, known as the TCAT, is trained by the LEA implementation team and then takes over leadership of the community action planning process. The TCAT will facilitate a community action planning event where groups of youth, families, and stakeholders from across the community come together to discover, dream, and deliver on ways to improve the priority area of transition practices as identified in the Transition Discoveries Data Report. Discovering, dreaming, and delivering are the three parts of the Transition Discoveries Community Action Planning event. Together, the TCAT and community members will work in groups to create 3 rounds of vision boards to illustrate and visualize their thoughts and ideas as a group. Round 1 is discovering and involves identifying positive practices, programs, supports, and activities that happen now to support the priority areas of transition practices as identified by the Transition Discoveries Data Report. Then, based upon what works, the community engages in dreaming in order to create new ideas for practices, programs, supports, and activities that could support the priority areas. During delivering, based upon what works and what could be, the TCAT creates ideas for the specific short term goals and activities needed to achieve them that will lead to implementing the practice, program, or service created during dreaming. Linkages between what is created during each phase are made through big takeaway activities, where the TCAT works with community members in identifying shared themes that together describe positive practices, programs, supports, and activities across the vision boards from these groups. This process results in a complete action plan with goals for improving practices, programs, and services, the actions required to accomplish them, the resources available and needed to implement them, and the responsible parties and partnerships. During this third stage, the LEA's responsibilities include supporting the TCAT by training them on the community action planning event process beforehand and managing the logistics of the event for the TCAT. The implementation team is provided all guidance and materials needed to facilitate the TCAT training. The fourth and final main stage of the implementation process involves the LEA resuming its leadership role but sharing responsibility with the TCAT, who together with the LEA will implement the activities on the action plan created during the community action planning event. Importantly, the LEA will continuously work with the TCAT to draw upon the Transition Discoveries Data Report findings to inform their activities. During this time, monthly progress monitoring will occur between the LEA and the TAC staff and the Transition Discoveries Initiative team. At the start of Stage 4, the LEA will complete additional online coursework on evidence-based practices for improving their priority area for action planning. There are 9 courses available that align to the priority areas that LEAs may be working on to implement an action plan for. Courses include transition planning, youth development, person and family directed planning, family engagement, relationship, independent living and community engagement, cross agency collaboration, employment, and post secondary education. LEAs will be focusing their action planning on only select areas and will therefore only take the courses that are relevant to their action planning priorities. These courses teach LEA teams how to train others in using specific evidence-based practices and tools related to improving their priority areas for action planning. And it also provides the LEA with the needed materials to implement them. Concurrently with these 4 stages of implementation, the LEA team will participate in an online community of practice. This will be a space where LEAs across the state who are implementing transition discoveries can share best practices for successful implementation of their action plans to improve transition practices, programs, services, and supports. Importantly, all LEAs will use a short, uniformly formatted check-in sheet to share their progress monthly with the community of practice. The primary purpose of the community of practice is to continuously collect and disseminate effective practices across the LEAs so that others can adopt the practices and learn from this peer-to-peer style guidance system. Now that you have completed this introduction, if your team is beginning the process of implementing transition discoveries, please continue your learning by watching the instructional videos for each stage of the transition discoveries implementation process. These can be accessed within the Schoology course titled Transition Discoveries Implementation.